everyone, welcome back. And in this video, I'm going to give you some information on story points in Agile. So before this, I had taken a video on how to do story estimations in Agile, and we've seen, apart from traditional method, how the Agile estimation techniques play a very important role in estimation of user stories. So I had mentioned about different techniques, and one of the techniques I would have mentioned about how development teams estimate user stories using story points. So I thought in this video I would give you an explanation of what story points are in Agile. So to give you a situation, we would have all been in that situation traditionally if we were following the traditional approach of product development. We would have committed to complete a task or a particular work. Let's say we would have estimated it to be 8 hours. But after taking up that task and executing that task, the actual amount of time that had taken to complete the task would have been around 15 to 20 hours. And that would have created a lot of chaos in the project timeline. It would have also brought a bad reputation on yourself as to bad estimation, or either you were slow in your work or you were not fit for completing the task. So all this would arise when it's you actually committed with something and then you brought an output that was not according to the estimated time. So if you see here in this particular scenario, there's a constant attachment, emotional attachment to time, because if you don't complete a task on time, then everything goes in a chaos. So with Agile story points, the main aim is to detach from time, okay? Detach from time estimations and to estimate work based on effort, okay? Which is why we go in for estimating work based on effort. We go in for story points. And why we go in for story points is another reason is, you might be asking, why, if we are able to estimate in time, then why go in story points? Because time is much more easier. But the news is, most of us are bad at estimations, okay? We estimate, but it's not accurate. Either we overestimate some tasks, okay, or we underestimate tasks, and it leads to incomplete work in your hand. Most of us, we cannot estimate exactly that a task would take 1 hour 5 minutes, it would take correctly 2 hours. You might complete it before, or you might take more time. So that's why story points come into the picture. So now let us see what is story points. So traditionally, as I said, product development teams estimate work in time, that is based on the number of hours or days or even months that it will take to complete a task or a particular project. Story points are metrics used in Agile product development to guess how difficult it will be to develop a product backlog item, which is a user story. Okay, so as I said, it will estimate how difficult it is to develop a backlog item, and not how much time it will take to develop. Okay, so you should understand the difference between them. So for example, instead of taking a user story and saying that it will take around 3 hours to complete, we would be looking at how much effort is it going to need to complete this particular user story, and giving that effort a particular value is what a story point is. That particular value is called a story point. So every user story will be assigned with a story point, which denotes the amount of effort needed to complete the user story. So initially, if you see, when you start a new project, okay, and you have user stories. Now user stories there are different ways in which you can put down your user stories, okay? You can have it in a Fibonacci series, okay? You can have it based on actual time, or you can have it based on multiples of 2. There are different combinations and different patterns by which you can go with the user story. So if your team is taking up a particular user story pattern, not every time a user story of 1 denotes 1 hour or 1 day of completion. Okay, initially when you start a new project and you say this user story is 1, you cannot say definitely that it's a 1 hour work or it's a 1 day work. Okay, But if you see, over time, after you have executed that work and you say you identify how much of work that one story point took, you will come up with an average value, okay? Which can be one user story would take 1 to 2 days, 2 point user story would take 2 to 4, 5 points would take 4 to 5. Okay, this is how the user stories get, what to say, indirectly linked to a particular time frame but not directly. Okay, so this is user stories. Over a couple of sprints you tend to identify this, you tend to identify the effort. Okay, and I'll give you an example how this user story estimations using story points is very useful. So let's say traditionally, okay, you're doing a traditional estimation and you're having these set of user stories with you, okay, or tasks with you. And if you see, the team sits together and they estimate that this first user story would take 1 day, and then the next user story 3 days, 5 days, 1 day, and 1 day, and so on. So this was the estimation. Okay, so you have around 5 tasks in hand and you have given an estimation. So totally, if you see, it is, you have it for a number of days. But actually, when the work was started and when it was being executed and after completion, it was identified that the actual time taken to complete this task or the user story was 2 days. The other one was 3 days, then again 6 days, and two stories were yet to even be started. So here, if you see, the actual time was had a much difference between the estimated time. So because of this estimation, here you are not, you have like 1 day over here and 2 days was the actual time. So 1 day is overdue. So this 1 day taken up over here prevented this task to be completed. Similarly, a 1 day overdue over here prevented this task to be completed, which led to incomplete work at the end of your iteration or the end of your time at which you plan to complete the tasks. So this is this scenario with very rigid and absolute estimation what you do. This is what happens. Okay. Now, because of this, there's a lot of chaos that gets created. You don't complete your work, you have to answer so many people, you have to give answers to clients on their end, they might be having some loss in their business because of this release. There are so many things that happen because of this type of a time bound absolute estimation of tasks. But coming on to story point estimation, which brings a great flavor to this particular situation, is, let's say I have 3 user stories, and instead of giving the exact time, saying that it's going to take 1 day, 2.5 days, 4 days, I am first going to estimate the effort. Okay, by estimating the effort, the development team has said for this user story it's going to cost 1 story point, for the second one it's going to cost 2 story points, and the third one it has a 5 point story point value. After giving that, okay, here you would see that generally over the sprints, as I said, you have 1 to 2 days. As we found out, a 1 story point would take approximately 1 to 2 days. 2 story points would take 2 to 4, and a 5 story points 4 to 5 approximately. So now the users, of course, there's a story point, but they would have said yes, probably this can be completed with 1 day, so they gave it a 1 story point. Then they also, the 2 point story point, it was 2.5, and then the next user story was estimated with 4 days. But by using this relative approach of story point estimation, if you see the actual days that it took to complete, 1 day was, which was estimated, took 2 days, 2.5 took 3, and 4 took 5 days. Now there is an overdue, right? There is definitely an overdue. But if you see here, there is nothing being incomplete. Everything was completed on time. Even if a person was not able to complete it in 1 day, still there was a cushion period of another day. So 2 days completion did not matter. So this is what is the beauty of using story point estimations. You give that cushion period between each point value. Okay, so you're not giving a rigid absolute value saying it's going to take 1.5 hours. You would say around 1, but still with this relative estimation, there is a cushion period as to 1 to 2 days, 2 to 4 days. So a slight delay apart from this time is not a problem. So even if the users take more than that time, it's okay because it falls between the expected duration. Even if the task is completed earlier, well and good. Most teams, what they do is, if at all they have surplus time, they take in user stories which need to be completed for the next forthcoming sprint. They'll take it and start working on in this particular sprint because they have extra time. So you're always in a safer side. Commitments that you give will be definitely completed. You won't be, sliding back. Definitely you will be on track and everyone would be able to sit back, relax, give the estimation an effort, and they will have time to complete the task rather than a lot of, time bound based emotions. So this is about story point estimation. Simple. Just keep it in mind. It's a value given based on the effort that is needed to complete a task in your project. So I hope you got some information on story points. The story points, it's very helpful when you even want to plan for your sprint. So every sprint you would know based on your sprint velocity. I've taken a video on what is sprint velocity. So based on your velocity, by knowing the story points, you would be able to take in the different stories into your sprint, and you would be able to calculate the different point, the sum of all your story points that you need to complete in your sprint based on your team's velocity. So story points are very useful and very beneficial. It's also used most of the time. You use story points for estimation of your backlog items, and teams generally, all agile teams, they follow this. And I hope that you got information on what is story points. Try to follow these techniques. Definitely it will be very useful in your project and for your team also. So I hope that this information was informative to you. And if you like this video, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel and do share your feedbacks. Thank you.